Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Star Wars video. So I've been spending the last 24 hours doing a bit of investigating, a bit of research in regards to a major piece of Star Wars news, which seems to confirm some massive Ahsoka Season 2 rumors. So I want you to think back to a big update we had over the summer. Apparently Dave Filoni's movie is going to incorporate skeleton crew characters, but he also has plans for Luke, Han, and Leia. And a follow-up report said that Leia is first going to appear in Ahsoka Season 2. And I thought that makes sense. Given what we saw from 3PO in the first season, Leia was mentioned, she has a big role as a senator, and also with New Republic military affairs, so it makes sense they would try and involve her in the story. But it turns out, this has been years in the making. And before we get into the big update of the day, I first want to point you towards some comments that Dave Filoni made around the time of the making of the sequel trilogy. So this comes from The Art of the Rise of Skywalker, and even back then, Dave was involved in some really serious conversations concerning Star Wars themes and the direction of some of these characters. And one character he says he was always fascinated by was Leia Organa. And George Lucas was the same. After Obi-Wan says that boy was our last hope, Yoda replies, "No, there is another." And George later revealed that Yoda always wanted Leia to be the one who was trained to face Vader, not Luke. Well, Dave Filoni seems to have taken this very seriously, and in a conversation with John Knoll and Pablo Hidalgo, he talks about the matriarchal importance of Leia in this story. Obviously, they're referring it back to the sequel trilogy, and with Kylo Ren, Leia is the mother of Ben Solo, but the group talks about the missed opportunities of Return of the Jedi. Leia honing in her powers, using the Force, and really showing that she is the twin of Luke Skywalker in more than just a sisterly way, in the sense that she too has the Force, and post-Endor she was trained in the ways of the Jedi. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dave was inspired by Legends and had a hand in creating that flashback sequence. And obviously Dave brought Leia into Rebels, she was mentioned in Ahsoka Season 1, so I'm starting to think he has plans for her. And an update today, my friends, seems to show us the way he's going to go about it, and it's about time Lucasfilm does this. And today's news, my friends, brings full circle a conversation that started back in 2020. You see, there was this very uncertain period of time around 2019, around the time of the release of The Rise of Skywalker and The Mandalorian's first season, where fans assumed we'd seen the last of Luke, Han and Leia. We didn't know if we were ever going to see them again after the characters' deaths in 7, 8 and 9. We figured with the rise of streaming, with The Mandalorian, with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series announced, that Lucasfilm was going to move on to new stories and new ventures. The public perception was that the sequel trilogy killed them off, and we had no idea if they were going to return to the classic trio in an earlier story, especially in live action. So when Luke shows up in Season 2, that really started the conversation of if there is a wider plan for more Luke, Han and Leia post-Episode 6, if this was going to be the start of something huge. And while there were plenty of conversations about the clunkiness of deepfake, I think our assumption was that they were just going to continue in this format, occasionally have a cameo from Luke, maybe someday Leia and Han. Well, today, my friends, we have an update which could suggest Lucasfilm might be moving in the right direction. So, a couple of weeks ago, Carrie Fisher's daughter Billie Lourd alluded to the fact that she might be returning to Star Wars. She's been Instagramming some very strong allusions to the galaxy far, far away. She was recently listening to John Williams' soundtrack for The Rise of Skywalker, and so she could be returning as Konix for Star Wars Starfighter, because she was recently in Europe, or it could be for Ahsoka Season 2, as Leia post-Return of the Jedi. And in a brand new interview with Collider.com, Billie Lourd does not hesitate, and she insists that she would love to return. And she says, quote, "I mean more Star Wars, more life. I'm available." And I predict this is a very similar situation to Ewan McGregor, who insists that he doesn't know anything, but keeps saying he wants to return. I think these actors know that they are going to be back. Both of them, by the way, I think in Ahsoka Season 2. Ewan McGregor in Clone Wars flashbacks, and with all of the rumours that Leia is going to be a major cameo in Season 2, Billie Lourd as the character her mother famously played. And you know what, guys? I think it's time. Lucasfilm needs to stop sitting on the fence. Either you go all in and you say the original trilogy trio is going to be part of this fight against Grand Admiral Thrawn, similar to the EU. They're at the forefront, they're part of the New Republic, and they're firmly involved. They're not off doing their own things, only popping in for a brief cameo, enough of the dallying. So either they decide to lean in, or they go down the route Dave Filoni's been teasing. The original trilogy characters are there, but they're taking a back seat, and the Star Wars Rebels characters are the ones leading this fight. Now the only problem with this is the further down the timeline you go, the closer you get to The Force Awakens, the less sense this makes, because the sequels were all about the original trilogy trio, whereas the Rebels characters were basically nowhere to be seen, unless of course they remained with the New Republic as Leia factioned off into the Resistance. But here's what I propose. If they're going to incorporate the original trilogy characters, I'm sorry to say, but it's time to recast. You have the perfect trio of actors who are capable, who are willing, and who have a lot of fan support. Lucasfilm should strongly consider using Billie Lourd as Leia Organa, Graham Hamilton as Luke, who by the way looked amazing without the effects, no CG, no deep faking, no digital doubles, none of that, and maybe bring back Alden, and heck, throw in Donald Glover as Lando. He's returning for the Lando project at some point. They're the perfect ages, and they're talented actors, and I don't know about you guys, but I would rather see those actors in those roles instead of a lifeless deepfake. And if Lucasfilm takes the leap, if they make that jump, they have so much freedom with Luke, Han and Leia. Because at the moment when Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni want to include Luke, they have to think twice about time constraints, and they have to make his appearance very short. Because they're using a deepfake algorithm, they have to think about the script and the words that they're going to use, because the mouth movement has to look right, the eye movement, and what kind of interaction is it? He often just stays very still, and every time they do lightsaber sequences, they just use the body double. But when they do those, they have to avoid showing his face too much, because then the deepfake looks very obvious. So what I'm saying is, they should just take the leap, and then you're free to do whatever you want. Because if Luke is going to be part of the fight with Thrawn, maybe we could see Luke taking out some night troopers, getting to Dathomir with the New Republic, and if he's going to kick some serious ass, I'd rather see Graham Hamilton than a clunky de-aged Mark Hamill. I understand these things are subjective, but I've been hearing that behind the scenes, these conversations are being had, and if it's not going to be for Ahsoka Season 2, you can bet your ass that it's going to be for Dave Filoni's movie. And I think it'd be even stranger to leave these characters out. It'd just be so weird if they're doing some kind of adaptation of Zahn's work and then not have the heroes of the original trilogy. Eventually, nothing is going to be more important than a face-to-face showdown with the Remnant, and I'd love to see Luke face off against any Force users that might emerge. We don't know what Thrawn has up his sleeve. We've heard of assassins, more Night Sisters, the Great Mothers. With Ahsoka and Sabine on Peridia, the New Republic needs Jedi, because I have a hunch it's not just going to be space battles, but hand-to-hand lightsaber combat. I mean, there is Ezra Bridger, I guess, but with Luke very much around and building his academy during this time, I'd like to think there is more planned for him, and I just don't see it working with the technology they're using. So I can't see too many ways around these characters, unless they want fans to be pretty disappointed, and to ask some very serious questions, what they're doing that is so much more important than saving the galaxy from a serious threat. But like I say, I do think they found a solution that they're not telling us about yet, and reading through comments in response to this news on social media, it looks like many fans are vocalizing that recasting is the best approach. In response to Graham Hamilton from Book of Boba Fett playing Luke, this person says, "Seriously though, where did they find that guy for Luke? That is literally just young Mark Hamill." And here's someone's interesting casting suggestion. Instead of Graham Hamilton, they suggest Oliver Stark as Luke. Not too sure about that. I think Graham is better. His expressions, his face, his body, his cadence, I think he's perfect as Luke. But instead of Alden Ehrenreich, they think Anthony Ingruber should be Han Solo. I googled this guy because I hadn't heard his name before, and yeah, I see why he's such a popular fan choice. He literally looks like a young Harrison. So those are all of the updates for today, my friends. Share your thoughts down below, and I'll see you next time. May the Force be with you, always.